Rule 9 of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. Let me get that good lighting right there, the thumbnail or something. Continuing our review series of the doctor's 12 Rules for Life book, Rule 9 or Chapter 9 is assume that the person you are listening to might know something that you don't. I love this chapter. It's pretty self-explanatory. I think I've said this before in one of my previous videos for this review series that the chapters or rules 1 through 10 are pretty self-explanatory in their titles. The last two, as you guys will see when I get to them, aren't. You have to infer a little bit, or you actually have to read the chapter to figure out what he's talking about in the chapter title. But Rule 9, assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't. Pretty self-explanatory. It's about the importance of listening to people during conversations. When people are listening to you, it's about the importance of putting away distractions, putting down your phone, stuff like that. And listening to them and actually listening to them. And how often does that actually happen these days? How often do people actually take the time to listen to each other? Put down the phone and distractions, look people in the eyes, and listen to them. Especially today, with our phones and our social media, notifications always going off. How often do we put our phone, I would use my phone when I'm filming on it right now, but put our phone face down the table and, switch everything else off, get rid of the distractions, and listen to people. That's why I love this chapter. I think it's a very timely chapter, for society today. So, enough of my opinion on it. I'll get back into my opinion in a bit. I'm going to get into the chapter now. I'm going to bounce around the chapter like I usually do. As you guys know, if you've been staying consistent with me with this review series, is that I don't read the entire chapter. I'm not going to. I'm just going to bounce around and hit on what I think are the key points that kind of sums it up. So let's get into it. Rule 9. Not advice. Psychotherapy is not advice. Advice is what you get when the person you're talking with about something horrible and complicated wishes you would just shut up and go away. Advice is what you get when the person you're talking to wants to revel in the superiority of his or her own intelligence. If you weren't so stupid after all, you wouldn't have your stupid problems. Psychotherapy is genuine conversation. Genuine conversation is exploration, articulation, and strategizing. When you're involved in a genuine conversation, you're listening and talking, but most importantly, you're listening. Listening is paying attention. It's amazing what people will tell you if you listen. Sometimes if you listen to people, they'll even tell you what's wrong with them. Sometimes they'll even tell you how they plan to fix it. Sometimes that helps you fix something wrong with yourself. One surprising time, and this is only one occasion of many when such things happen, I was listening to someone very carefully and she told me within minutes, A, she was a witch, and B, that her witch coven spent a lot of its time visualizing world peace together. She was a long-time lower-level functionary in some bureaucratic job. I would never have guessed that she was a witch. I also didn't know that witch covens spent any of their time visualizing world peace. I didn't know what to make of any of it either, but it wasn't boring, and that's something. In my clinical practice, I talk and I listen. I talk more to some people, I listen more to others. Many of the people I listen to have no one else to talk to. Some of them are truly alone in the world. There are far more people like that than you think. You don't meet them because they're alone. Others are surrounded by tyrants, or narcissists, or drunks, or traumatized people, or professional victims. Some aren't good at articulating themselves. They go off on tangents, they repeat themselves, they say vague and contradictory things. They're hard to listen to. Others have terrible things happening around them. They have parents with Alzheimer's or sick children. There's not much time left over for their personal concerns. It's a good way to start the chapter. He starts, I'd say quite a few of the chapters in this book in a similar way. Not quite like that, but by using an example of something he learned from his clinical practice, because he was a clinical psychologist. Not anymore. Since his rise to fame, I think he's kind of, at least temporarily, put a hold on his clinical practice, but he did that for 25 years. So definitely, he's got a lot of examples, and he has these examples chalked through in this book. I'll bounce around here to the next section of the chapter, but that's a good way to start the chapter about the importance of listening. Let me find the next relevant section here. It's called the listening person. A listening person can reflect the crowd. He can do that without talking. He can do that merely by letting the talking person listen to himself. That's what Freud recommended. He had his patients lie on a couch, look at the ceiling, let their minds wander and say whatever wandered in. That's his method of free association. That's the way the Freudian psychoanalyst avoids transferring his or her own personal biases and opinions into the internal landscape of the patient. It was for such reasons that Freud didn't face his patients. He didn't want their spontaneous meditations to be altered by his emotional expressions, no matter how slight. He was properly concerned that his own opinions, and worse, his own unresolved problems, would find themselves uncontrollably reflected in his responses and reactions, conscious and unconscious alike. He was afraid that he would, in such a manner, detrimentally affect the development of his patients. It was for such reasons as well that Freud insisted that psychoanalysts be analyzed themselves. He wanted those who practiced his method to uncover and eliminate some of their own worst blind spots and prejudices, so they wouldn't practice corruptly. And Freud had a point. He was, after all, a genius. You can tell that because people still hate him. But there are disadvantages to the detached and somewhat distant approach recommended by Freud. Many of those who seek therapy desire and need a closer, more personal relationship, although that also has its dangers. This is in part why I've opted in my practice for the conversation instead of the Freudian method, as have most clinical psychologists. Very interesting, another example, not so much of Jordan's experience, but of Freud's. I'm guessing one of the first real psychoanalysts. He developed his own method of psychotherapy, as far as I know, with my limited understanding. We'll go to the next section here called How Should You Listen? And he starts it with some advice by Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers, one of the 20th century's great psychotherapists, knew something about listening. He wrote, "The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate because listening is too dangerous. The first requirement is courage, and we don't always have it." He knew that listening could transform people. On that, Rogers commented, "Some of you may be feeling that you listen well to people and that you've never seen such results. The chances are very great indeed that your listening hasn't been of the type I've described." He suggested that his readers conduct a short experiment when they next found themselves in a dispute. Stop the discussion for a moment and institute this rule. Each person can speak up for himself only after he's first restated the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker accurately and to that speaker's satisfaction. I found this technique very useful in my private life and in my practice. I routinely summarize what people have said to me and ask them if I've understood properly. Sometimes they accept my summary, sometimes I'm offered a small correction, and now and then I'm wrong completely. And all of that is good to know. That's very interesting. And I've tried this before, and it's very helpful. I don't know if Carl Rogers was the person who came up with this concept, this technique. But regardless if he has or not, very, very helpful. I've tried this before. So you get into this practice of when someone's talking to you before, let's say if you're in a debate with someone. And this is really good for debates. And I enjoy debating with people. It's something that I've tried. If you're going to be in a debate with someone, what you can try doing is after they've stated their point, before you try to respond and refute them, their point, before you make your counterpoint, try summarizing what they say. So you can say, okay, I think this is what you said, correct me if I'm wrong. And then you repeat what you said to them. And if you get it right, it's because you were listening. And you can tell if you weren't listening if they correct you, which is what he says. If you're a little wrong, you weren't listening. You were listening pretty well, but not totally intently. If you were way off, you weren't listening at all. And that's not a great start to the debate. So you start over. You listen to him again. You say, sorry, let's try again. I'm going to wait. I want to make sure I know what you're saying before I give my counterpoint. And by doing that, we can have more productive conversations, more productive debates, right? We have a lot of things going on right now in American politics, and I'm tailoring this part of the video to America because I live in the United States. But really, this goes for any of you and in any country in the world. Not just for social issues and politics, but for anything really, it's helpful to do that, to try to understand the other person's side clearly before going to your point. That it saves time, it cuts out all of the nonsense. There doesn't have to be a screaming match, which if you're an American, you're living in America, that seems to be all that politics has gotten to today. And I've never really liked politics. No one's ever really liked politics. But it's gotten to this boiling, this crazy point of contention where we're divided into two sides. They're just screaming at each other. And you can take that and expand that out to our country or to anyone really in the world, it seems like. And especially on social media, like on Twitter. My God. Twitter is awful for that. Awful. So this technique really helps. You can listen to someone and understand their viewpoint by repeating it back to them. Very helpful. I've tried that before. Very, very helpful. We'll go to one of the last sections here. I don't want this video going on too long. Of course, I always say that, and then it's long anyways. So let me get to this last section here to wrap it up. This last few paragraphs here that I like a lot. It's as if you're listening to yourself during such a conversation, just as you're listening to the other person. You're describing how you're responding to the new information imparted by the speaker. You're reporting what that information has done to you, what new things it made appear within you, how it's changed your presuppositions, how it's made you think of new questions. You tell the speaker these things directly. Then they have the same effect on them. In this manner, you both move towards somewhere newer and broader and better. You both change as you let your old presuppositions die, as you shed your skins and emerge renewed. A conversation like this is one where it's the desire for truth itself on the part of both participants that's truly listening and speaking. That's why it's so engaging, vital, interesting, and meaningful. That sense of meaning is a signal from the deep ancient parts of your being. You're where you should be, with one foot in order and the other tentatively extended into chaos and the unknown. You're immersed in the Tao, following the great way of life. There, you are stable enough to be secure, but flexible enough to transform. There, you're allowing new information to inform you, to permeate your stability, to repair and improve its structure and expand its domain. There, the constituent elements of your being can find their more elegant formation. A conversation like that places you in the same place that listening to great music places you, and for much the same reason. A conversation like that puts you in the realm where souls connect, and that's a real place. It leaves you thinking, that was really worthwhile. You really got to know each other. The masks come off and the searchers are revealed. So listen to yourself and to those with whom you're speaking. Your wisdom then consists not of the knowledge you already have, but the continual search for knowledge, which is the highest form of wisdom. It's for this reason that the priestess of the Delphic oracle in ancient Greece spoke most highly of Socrates, who always sought the truth. She described him as the wisest living man because he knew that what he knew was nothing. Assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't.